What up? What up? It is Brian with the Blerding While Dad live stream. Sorry, I was a little bit late. Because I was planning, I had an entire idea and concept of what I wanted to do for the show, and it looks like I'm gonna have to rewrite some stuff on the fly at the last minute because I do some preparation for this. I also kind of came to a decision about what I want to do with the Blerding While Dad online community. Um, because I wanted to lean into something that's in my wheelhouse and in my bag. Um, I am I had an entire career of working with kids and families, teaching social skills. I even helped redo a training about principles of behavior and a lot of other things. And I do think that there needs to be a resource for Black parents. And so I'm kind of reformatting the community to serve that need. Where we can have honest conversations as Black parents. Still going to be the League of Extraordinary Unks and Aunties, but it might lean into the League of Extraordinary Moms and Dads too. And so that's what I want to plan. That's what I'm planning on doing. Hey, how's it going? Watching hockey. All right, man. Let's go. Hey, um, we've been in this house, we've been really into um the women's college world series. Um my wife really discovered that she is 100% wants to be a softball mom, and we can't convince our 16-year-old daughter to pick the sport up. But it's really been exciting. We're really enjoying the tournament so far, and it's kind of stretching out into new sports we don't always watch. We're typically basketball, football, but started watching hockey, started watching softball. So all right, good luck. May the odds be in your favor. um so tonight we're gonna get into top of the show. We're gonna we're gonna talk some shit about Iran. Like we're gonna have that conversation, trying to get these trying to get these old head racist old guard Canadians out. um it's weird when you start um proposing to change things, even if it's for the betterment of the sport. Some people are going to fight you tooth and nail, and people like things the way they like things. You could see it when you're developed, like neighborhoods and stuff like that. When you have cities or whatnot, I kind of live in one of those smaller Midwestern, well, not smaller, it's kind of a mid-sized Midwestern city, and we're surrounded by smaller towns and stuff. And then a lot of times, those people don't want positive change to come. They don't want economic opportunities to come. They don't want families to come in, because a lot of times older folks, they just want a comfortable place to die in. Like they're comfortable. They don't want all the traffic. They like being able to go to the grocery store and not have to deal with lines or anything along those lines. But it is, and it's not. What up? What up? It's not weird to call Canadians racist. It's really not, when you know a little bit of the history and you talk to some Black people that are from Canada. It's not weird to call Canadians racist at all. They don't beat the allegations either. Specifically when you look at some of the history of how they've done First Nations people and stuff along those lines. Tonight, so first things first. The first segment is always how fucked are we, and that's my current event segment. That's me doing current events, like how fucked are we, and that's typically what I say when I turn on the news. Is, ooh, how fucked are we today? And so that's kind of what the segment is. We're going to talk about this misadventure that we have in Iran right now, and it's like how this thing has no exit. And I think what happens is, we're used, like, is in this imperial country and the way the country moves around, we are really used to some kind of when we do evil, when we do wrong stuff in this country, we're used to some kind of evil mastermind being behind it, and there's like this more nefarious underlying purpose. And what we are kind of experiencing right now is just evil and bad thinking kind of freestyling. It's just making up stuff on the fly. Okay. And so when we talk about our fearful leader, um, one of the things that the president likes to do is he likes to pretend to have this level of dominance, and that really speaks to what his brand is. It's all about dominance and ownership and control and being on top of and being better than and all that other stuff. He's the ultimate salesman. And when I say that, people kind of draw back. When I say that um, we're kind of being led by the ultimate salesman, what we have is a guy who his goal, whenever he's in front of somebody, whenever he is in a negotiation or anything, his goal is to win the interaction. That's what we got. Trump is a guy who wants to win the interaction, and it doesn't go any further than that. It's we win the interaction here, and now that we win the interaction, we're going to use more audacity to kind of navigate the consequences of winning the interaction. And what we're seeing right now is you can't do foreign policy in that manner. There's a really specific reason. I'm off my notes here, so just it is what it is. There's a very specific reason why the U.S. has not invaded Iran. Now, they've destabilized Iran's government. We installed the Shah and upset Iran's democratically elected government. But we haven't formally put troops on the ground in Iran for a very specific reason, and all of us are feeling it at the pump. The Strait of Hormuz was kind of the wild card because I don't think people really quite understood how global shipping worked, but now we got a crash course on it, because when you shut down the the primary route that most of the oil reaches the world market, you have the ability to shut down the world, and you have a bargaining chip that most people can't really contend with. And then the way it's set up is Iran could just sit inside the country, far away from far away from the water, and just send drones out there and blow up whatever they want to. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. And the Iranian regime is insane. Define insane. I think for me, insane is intentionally going out and destabilizing democratically elected governments, installing dictators who are cruel just because they're going to give you a little bit of, a little bit under the table, and then expecting that the people there are going to love you. That's insane to me. And I think we are fine with insane regimes. Like Saudi Arabia is our friend. Like they're our pal. Like, dap it up, Saudi Arabia, right? They come here and kidnap people and kill them and dismember them. Like they, and so, but we cool with Saudi Arabia. Like Saudi Arabia is fine with us. We have good working relationships with all kinds of despots and what we consider to be unstable, crazy people all over the world. As long as we have good, friendly, as long as we got good, friendly economic relations with people, we don't really care. This country doesn't really care. And I do think we do have this narrative bias when it comes to this country, where there has to be, and I'll put it up on screen, just out of fairness. We have a narrative bias in this country where we have to see things in terms of good guys, bad guys. And a lot of citizens in this country have a specific bias when it comes to this country, where we are always the good guys. Even when we're doing horrific shit. I've seen people try to hand wave away some pretty awful things that this country has done, saying, well, it's for the greater good. For the greater good of who? Because typically the greater good doesn't filter down to you or me or anybody else. The greater good typically finds its way into the bank accounts of the people that are positioned to profit from it. So, like I said, I think the Iranian regime is insane. It was what's the word for it? I think it's convenient. I think it's an expedient way to explain why we decided to just randomly try to brute force our way into Iran. There's a reason why all the other previous presidents did not go out and invade Iran, and it didn't have anything to do with, um, morality or anything else. It was what will happen after. And I think we are dealing with pure id in the White House, where there is no after. There is no thought about what happens now. There's no thought about, there's no consideration about what happens now. We've done the thing. What happens now? This is a toddler's way of doing diplomacy, where we do the thing, we lash out violently, and then just, we don't even, like, when the consequences come, like, what the hell are those? One of the things I learned, because like I said, I basically rewrote a good chunk of the training that we had for principles of behavior in my old professional life. And it's the way we train the staff on how to intervene with youth behavior and adult behavior and stuff like that. And a lot of times when you put time and introduce time as a factor, as a variable between behavior and a consequence, people get confused. And the more time you put in between the cause and effect, or behavior and consequence, the more people disassociate the two things. Right now, we have somebody that doesn't even think 5 minutes ahead in the future. And this is also the problem where you have a bunch of really, 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 really old people who aren't going to live to see the consequences of what they wrought upon us. That's what happens when you put them in charge, because they know they're not going to be here in 10, 20, 30 years. They don't care. They're going to do what they want to do, and it doesn't really matter. They're going to be gone, and we're going to be stuck holding the bag. So I'm way off my notes here, but like I said, Trump's brand isn't dominance. It's more of a salesmanship with no plan of closing the deal. It's just this open-ended thing. And he wants to win the interaction. It's not winning the situation. It's not the long game. It's just that that moment, the interaction. All right, let's see. It's a money grab for the 1%. We the people need to stand against our anti-American government. Yeah. I think it's a money grab. I do think that, and I've done my entire Epstein episode. I do think that, and my take on Epstein has always been that he is an asset for multiple governments, multiple superpowers. Like, he was an asset for all these different superpowers. And when you do more of a deep dive, put on my journalistic bag and started going through the report, he compiled a lot of very, very sensitive information about the people in power. And I think that that was used as leverage, and said, either you follow along and do what we say and do this invasion of Iran, or this is going to make front page news. It's hard to punish for they don't care. They don't even care about people in their space. I think we do, to a degree. I think we care about people in I do think Americans care about people in their immediate space, or people that look like them. But I also do think that there are some layers where we don't understand the impact of the actions that we take upon each other. Imagine you're standing on the side of the lake casting stones into the lake, right? And this is kind of systems theory. You're standing on the sidelines, casting pebbles into the lake, and you're just watching the rock skip across. And that's kind of where most people are. They throw the stone across the lake and they watch the rocks skip across. Very few of us are conditioned to actually look at the ripples and see where the ripples collide with other ripples. And I think a lot of us go through the world like that. When I used to have to talk to legislators and stuff, when I was running my program, um, a lot of times they would propose these unilaterally sweeping changes, thinking that it was helpful to the kids in service and the families in service or whatnot, and they did not understand that they were introducing more friction into our world as providers and in the kids' world as recipients or even victims of the system. And oftentimes, most people are ignorant of the consequences of what they do, the real life consequences, because they don't have to carry them. Say that Gen Z is not going to willingly pay the price for the boomers. Um, yeah, I don't think we have much of a choice. I think we're kind of stuck here for right now because unfortunately the world is we've kind of created this world where um you know the younger generations don't really have anything but political power at this point in time. um the people that have the capital and the power and stuff, they got all the influence right now. And it's kind of been rigged. So I mean, the greatest wealth transfer in the history of whatever, it's already gone down. The people in charge that have the money have the money. And so unfortunately, Gen Z, I think what we're seeing is a lot of moves being made to disrupt Gen Z's ability to alter things. But I also don't know if the generational divide is the one that we need to lean into when it comes to consolidating power. Um, I do think that there are going to be different perspectives on Gen Z. Like, here's the thing. My age range, I am baby Gen X, like baby Gen X, who grew up with a bunch of and like ancient millennials. So I'm in that exennial kind of range. Um, that means I came of age as a black person in the drug and crack era and stuff. The stuff you see in movies. I've lived some of the stuff that people see in these coming of age movies. Like I lived it and survived it, and not intentionally, like just being a kid going to school. And it's given me a specific perspective and outlook on the world that other people, other generations may or may not have. We don't understand scale at all. Yeah. We don't understand scale, proportion, large numbers, none of that stuff. Human beings aren't really prepared to process that stuff. So we need to lean into this. I do. I would like to see in my perfect world, we would and put him in actual fact. And Reagan would be forever seen as the villain that he really was in the lives of Black Americans, because they completely sold out an entire community so that he could beat the Russians, beat the Soviets. That was the entire play. So what we're dealing with is the consequences of this action to invade Iran. Okay. And so Trump authorized Operation Epic Fury, which, here's the thing. As soon as I saw Epic Fury, I'm like, oh, this is serious and unserious at the same time, which is really scary when you're talking about a federal government. The US and Israel launched joint airstrikes, and they killed all of Iran's leadership. In addition, a bunch of children. And Iran did what they used the leverage that they had. They shut down the Strait of Hormuz, which is one of the most critical shipping lanes in the world. People don't understand how critical logistics and shipping and all that stuff is. People really don't have a concept of it until it goes away. People don't understand supply chains until it gets disrupted. And even then, they still don't really understand supply chains. Okay. What happened is we bombed Iran and literally killed everybody that the US government said would take over the regime. the people in Iran that the U.S. government said, you know what? I think this person will be good. The person that we would prop up to run this regime, because that's kind of how the U.S. government operates. Take these headphones off because nobody's talking. We we effectively killed all of those people because it wasn't thought out. Nobody thought about it. It was just a thing that, in the moment, Trump just said, hey, they got this leverage over my head and I'm gonna do the thing. I don't think it was 100% that, and I'm not taking accountability away from that. I think that he's an easy mark. And that's the only way that's the best way I can describe it. Dude is an easy mark. I'm always saying Nixon, right? Trump is an easy mark. And I think a lot of people around the world have clocked that. All you got to do is play to his ego a little bit and he'll give you what you want. And he always has to create the narrative fiction that he's winning the interaction. If you've ever seen him where he takes an L, he can't deal with it, bro. Like, it's a crash out, big long social media screed, and all of that stuff. He can't emotionally take looking bad on television. Yeah. Well, and Zoran Mamdani went in there and kind of he knew how to play the Trump game. He knew how to get on his good side and get in his good graces, and that's what he did. And I don't think people quite understand that. But here's the thing, and this is kind of the thing this is the critique. This is one of the long critiques, one of the many critiques I have of the online white left. For whatever reason, they have determined that any kind of negotiation at any way, shape, or form is a surrender. And so it's confounding when they see somebody who they consider one of their own making the concessions to win the interaction. It's really an anti-political movement. That's a political movement. That's weird. And I know that that's not an academic critique and people are going to have an issue with it, but that's just my viewpoint on the interactions that I've seen so far, where it's really this inability to give an inch and be willing to take absolutely nothing, be willing to win nothing, but you get the chance to pound your chest and say, I stood on my square. And you can't govern like that either. You can't govern like that. Okay. So let me run down some numbers real quick and then I will get back to comments here in a second. Let me see. They're never paying attention. I predicted he would like Zoran Mamdani. Yeah. Because he's the winner in the media. Well, and I think also he manipulated him. I mean, he ran game on him, bro. Like I said, Trump is an easy mark. And the rest of the world has kind of clocked it. As long as you have enough power, influence, money, and you look good on television, and you say the right things to ingratiate yourself to him, you got him. And so let's see, Strader Hormuz shut the thing down. They keep teasing, and I think we're at this market manipulation thing where they keep teasing the deal, and we don't have a deal, and we do have a deal. No, I don't think any deal's on the table. I don't think that there's necessarily a deal on the table. I think we're just kind of in this weird stasis where shit is just happening. We're still like we called a ceasefire, and we done blown up stuff. They done blown up stuff of ours. We blown up stuff of theirs. I don't like ours and theirs. U.S. has blown up Iran. Iran's blown up U.S. things. And then we hear our information system from DC talking about, yeah, well, the ceasefire is still going. What is, unless there's a new definition of what a ceasefire actually is, it looks like it's still hot. Okay. And so they executed, when we look at these places that we consider our allies, okay, our main ally in the region executed at least 356 people, which is Saudi Arabia in 2025. That's a new record internationally. Second year in a row setting that record. Over half were foreign nationals. For many, it was nonviolent drug offenses. Saudi Arabia gives us oil because we're loyal dogs to them. We're loyal to them. We're a loyal resource to them. That's about it. So at what point does winning the interaction actually stop working as a governing strategy? And I think it's failed multiple times, but we're kind of trapped in this cycle. Trump is desperate for a deal that gets him out of this mess. He doesn't want to finish the job. Oh no, I think that's true. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if the negotiation thing is they negotiate, because I know one of the things that was on the table was like some obscene like 300 billion to restore all the infrastructure we destroyed in Iran through this catastrophic misadventure. And the deal we cut for ourselves is something along the lines of, and US companies get a chance to get a crack at those contracts. And I guarantee you Kushner is going to insinuate himself in there, because that's what he does. He's running a lot of these companies that are getting these contracts all over the world. And I think that's going to be part of the play. When it can put money into the coffers of the Trump family, we're going to see an actual deal, or this thing will just quietly continue on, and they will keep telling us that we're winning and it's going well and stuff until they can line their pockets. My mother, it's because they're like, we should support Iran and the global South and nothing else but suffering. I mean, we should just allow ourselves to be cut by it. I don't think it's a zero-sum game. I think at some point at some point we realize that this concept of American exceptionalism, where Magna Carta, everybody has to bow down to us. We realize that this is a strategy that in the long term is harming most of the people in this country. And we decide to stop. And then we start figuring out how we do some restorative care for the places that we've destroyed through this bullshit economic, political, what's the other word? Diplomatic strategy of making the whole world bow down to us. And I don't like using us like that, but I think we see it as some zero-sum game. We don't have to continue to exploit the global South. It's a choice. We could all be thriving, but we are so addicted to fake scarcity in this country that we think that ending the exploitation of other countries worldwide somehow imperils us. Basically, is to try to change this country. A lot of Black people never benefited from imperialism, but we kind of did. Okay, so, and I've said this a couple episodes ago, imperialism and colonialism are kind of cousins. And oftentimes the shit that this country does to other countries and other citizenries, they've tested out on Black folks. Chemical warfare, biological warfare. Hell, we even bombed people like this. Philadelphia and the move building was an actual bomb. Like, we've done all kinds of stuff. All the stuff that we've done to other countries, COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence manipulation of people, that was tested here. This continues, the world economy will be devastated, including the right. And what we have is this nihilistic, ultra wealthy death cult. And this is something I talked about. We got this death cult that it's this class of billionaires that they're sitting around eagerly waiting for the collapse of the world. And they got these bunkers. They got all this other stuff that sounds insane to me, you, and anybody else that's listening. China will get it done and set the belt up. But then China is kind of driven to a degree and they do some of the weird funky shit that America does too. And they're doing it in Africa. Because we spend so much, because I mean, it's an industry at this point. It's its own, the military is its own industry at this point. And there's a lot of money being exchanged at the higher levels of the government. And so a lot of career politicians are getting rich by shoving more money and more resources into the pockets of the weapons makers here. You know, we have planes that we've spent that have been in R&D for 30 years that will never see combat. But since it made somebody rich somewhere, we're going to keep dumping money into it. Yeah, I don't think we're necessarily just going to collapse. I think what we're going to do, I think the key is, and I don't even think it's just leaving people alone. I do think, it's weird because when you look at what happened with Elon destroying USAID, which was totally like revenge for whatever he thought that they did in South Africa with getting rid of apartheid or whatever whatever bug crawled up his ass that day. We're seeing the impacts of it right now, where Ebola is raging out of control and threatening the US in a real way. Because all the weird, sideways, dark money, subversive shit that USAID did in other countries, it also did help prevent preventable illness from reaching these shores. And now we're seeing the impacts of it. That's why I think America's narrative bias is a really weird thing, because it's not like this idea that we always have to be the protagonist in every story, or for some people we always have to be the antagonist. And I think that there's something to be said for just neutral evil. Yes, to impose our will on the world. And I think that's the piece that is a drug. I mean, it's a drug for a lot of people. That's why these politicians, hell, that's why these people stay in office when they're 90 years old. Look at Mitch McConnell. Look at Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell looks like there is a team of puppeteers who are drunk operating his lifeless body. Like, Mitch McConnell looks like he should be sitting in a chair somewhere, and then somebody comes in from the home and then dusts him off every once in a while to keep dust and cobwebs from collecting on him. He looks like a failed animatronic. He looks like the decommissioned this decommissioned thing from Showbiz Pizza or Chuck E. Cheese, depending on where you live. The reason why he stays in the game is because the power is addictive. They get addicted to it. They get addicted to that status and what it confers. That man is barely there. He is, I feel like it looks like his body is being piloted by a vengeful spirit. Like, he's given up the ghost and his body's being piloted by a vengeful spirit. Or, like I said, a team of drunk puppeteers. One of the two. But the power is addictive. And he can't see himself doing anything else. And I think that's what happens in American politics. America would just become Russia. America already is Russia. I mean, look at Russia is just open about it. Like, they don't really care about the open air corruption. It really don't matter to them at all. That shit doesn't matter to, like, you think Putin really cares about, oh, you're corrupt? He's like, yeah, I know. I know this. Is that supposed to, like, and? That's not a good thing for the rest of the world. I do agree. I think the concept of these superpowers and being a superpower in the world is just odious in and of itself. Yeah, Trump is there and he's making golden calf while Moses is on the mountain receiving God's laws. He's turned the population to money talk while he takes it from us. Right. Because it's all been a big cash grab. I still, in my heart to this day, I don't think that he thought he was going to win the first election. I thought that he was going to use that election to launch his shitty lifestyle, a new iteration of this shitty failing lifestyle brand that he was running. And he'd be able to just stay in Trump Tower and, do whatever he does and pretend to be a very successful businessman. I don't think he ever intended to win that first election. But once he got a taste of, ooh, this is a good hustle. I can make a lot of money doing this. Now he's fully insinuated into the role that he's in. But I think this was a big cash grab for him. This has always been a big cash grab for him. It's never been anything other than that. I'm not familiar with that. China is not going to save anyone. They'll become America 2.0. I don't think people. Well, and see, China is doing oppressive, shit in their own right, and so they're not necessarily a model, and that's why the U.S. sees them as competition. That is the biggest thing in this country. The thing that will get your community destroyed faster than anything else is if you're competing with the dominant community. This country is not about competition. It hasn't been about competition for a long, long time. I don't know if it's ever been about competition. It's always been about exploitation, and who can get the leg up and how you can rig the game to win without competing. And I think that's one of the biggest lies that we talk about in this country. It's never been about the idea of I create a better mousetrap and so I win. It's who can create the cheapest mousetrap with using the fewest resources and get it to market fast. This has never been about competition. And so this country doesn't like the concept of China competing with them. And so they're the boogeyman for us. People will call it Western propaganda coming from Vietnam. What does that even mean? Right. Humans are self-interested. That's a survival instinct. And I think that's kind of where it is. But some of us value the lives of other people more than others. Centers of power is create evil. Yeah. Hold up. It's racism on another level. That is true. And I think I will take a look at it and let me pull it up. I got to be careful trying to open up another window because StreamYard does not like that. So let me look at Natasha. You said I'm not surprised by any. Like I am not surprised because the real anti-blackness is global, and so nothing that is anti-black that happens in another country surprises me in any way, shape, or form. And the way that China is exploiting regions in Africa, I don't have a whole lot of love for them either. Sparkle, dark skin version, I will toy. Yep. All right, that sounds about right. Like I said, anti-blackness is like is a common thing worldwide. And so I'm not shocked because that's the common denominator. And a lot of societies have colorism built into it. It really does. And so that's just I'm looking at it right now. I don't want to put it up on my screen because I don't want to get flagged for it. But yeah, it's insidious. I'll throw it up on here. Let me do that. I won't punk out. It's really insidious. But like I said, I'm not surprised by it because anti-blackness is they made one of those little yeah. My mom actually used to collect everything that was blackface or minstrel showy that was out there. She would collect it so that the other people she's just like, I don't want white folks to get a hold of this stuff. And so she would have it in her collection and show it to me. It's like, this is kind of what the media represents us as. So let's see if I can save it. Yep. So I'll put it up on screen so you guys can get a look at the Natasha doll. But like I said, I'm not shocked or surprised by any version of anti-blackness that gets rolled out here. Yeah, it's crazy looking, bro. Like look, I expect that. Unfortunately, because that is the easiest worldwide. Racism against black people is typically one of the most accepted forms of racism, and I think it goes back to um, colorism and a lot of other stuff. But that's the global racism. Anti-blackness is global. That's why I tell people all the time. They don't necessarily believe me. That's why I said I'm not surprised anything about Canada being racist, given their history. Yeah. And so I listen, China ain't a friend. China's exploiting Africa in numerous ways, bro. It's crazy. And I don't have the research in front of me, so I don't necessarily want to speak about a lot of it because I don't like to speak out of turn if I don't have the research in front of me. But just the different projects that China has, really what they do is they loan a lot of these countries all this money to build this infrastructure, knowing that these entities in Africa don't have the resources to pay them back in the time frame, and then that gives them the window essentially to take over and hostile acquisition of all these resources and everything for cheap. They didn't have to spend the man hour or powers to build it. They just kind of leased it out. So yeah, black and native one is double racist, right? I'll take a look at it. It's weird to hear from an American Canada is racist. Yeah, I mean, yeah, China. And the thing is, because here's the thing, there are dark skinned Chinese people, and they get put through hell. That's just the global nature of anti-black racism. I don't know what it says about us as a society. I really don't. But that's the global nature of anti-black racism. And it's the comfortable one. It's the one that people are fine with, weirdly. Let me jump back here. I'll look up the creators and stuff, and I might, if you tune in next week, I can have a little bit of a deeper dive on it. Because I want to spend some time with it and really give a backstory about it and talk about it intelligently. All right. I had an entire segment, and so I'm kind of stretching for time. I had an entire segment about the DC blackout and the boycott that is happening, was happening. I don't know what the status of it is. And so instead of bringing it up and talking about my perspective on it, I think I can talk a little bit about how I'm seeing people react to the idea that black people, some black comic book nerds want to boycott DC. Fine with it. It doesn't hurt anybody except DC, and it sends a message. But people are actually legitimately getting mad about it. They're getting mad about it. And it's such a weird concept to me. Yep, Southern Ally and Japan has some pretty dark people too. Oh man, you start getting into the racism and the layers of racism over there in that theater, in that part of the world. Whoo! There's a reason why a lot of those countries in the South Pacific don't mess with Japan like that, bro. But yeah, and so I could kind of give you a breakdown of what the demands were for the DC blackout, but I don't know the status of it, and so I can't speak to it. Initially, it's the idea that DC has gone over 1,200 days without a mainline ongoing black lead for a character, and out of the thousands and thousands and thousands of books, 50 years of publishing, DC has only produced like 10 black led ongoing series in the mainline continuity. We're not talking about Elseworlds. We're not talking about things that can fade in and out of existence. We're talking about mainline continuity, which is the continuity that all the artists draw from and all the editorial draws from when talking about histories of characters. The last one was I Am Batman by John Ridley. Okay. And so it's the boycott is organized by Jay Penumbra, Blurred Without Fear, Captain Diesel, Captain Kaori Knight. And it's really just to ask DC and kind of demand that we see some action moving forward for a black-led mainstream continuity book, and it be given time to grow. Because look at it like this. As much as I mess with Scott Snyder, oh, I did see the Wolverine game state. Oh yeah, the Wolverine game on State of Play was crazy. The Wolverine on State of Play was crazy. I don't know. I think, but I Am Batman. I mean, the way I see it wasn't making Batman black. Batman is a legacy character. Anybody can hold the mantle of Batman or be the Batman of this place, right? And so I don't necessarily see it as that. I think Batman's kind of this thing that can move around, because they've even showed Damian Wayne as Batman in a recent book. And so Batman, Dick Grayson's been Batman. And so I don't necessarily see a problem with switching, the mantle of Batman and making him a black character. In fact, I think it makes more sense when you have the black Batman of a black Gotham, like watching a rich white billionaire fly in and break your kneecap would kind of I think in Gotham City you'd be like, hey, Batman is the police. And a community centered Batman makes a lot more sense. They're trying to move towards that. But anyway, the campaign is organized by the creators I listed, and they really want 1 to 3 new black-led ongoing series in the mainline continuity with strong black creative teams and a runway to be successful. Because, like I said, I love Scott Snyder. I'm a huge Scott Snyder mark. But that Green Arrow book wasn't doing shit, and that lasted over a year. That wasn't nobody was reading that Green Arrow book, and they let that thing run for a year. And Scott Snyder even said nobody was reading that book. And digital comics don't count. And so I think a lot of black nerds, we got to understand that digital comic sales, they don't count those. But when they do get a black-led book, it's a shorter leash, it's less marketing. Comic book stores still have to get a chance to decide if they're going to pick it up or not. And so, when you're introducing a new black character, you have to build the audience. The audience doesn't automatically come to it. Miles Morales was kind of a rare exception where he just kind of crossed over, but even Marvel gave Miles Morales enough of a runway to establish his fan base. Yeah. The Green Arrow book was good. And I think that was the one that led up where it was with Waller. And I remember there was a lot of stuff that crossed over with Amanda Waller and that DC event that didn't mean jack shit in continuity, except it led to Lazarus Planet and something with Brainiac. I think that was the book that I was picking up on. But nobody was reading it. And DC gave the full allotment of resources to a book that nobody was picking up consistently. Green Arrow's not my favorite character, but he's better than Hawkeye. Green Arrow's politics have always been dope. I've always messed with Green Arrow from a political standpoint because they made Green Arrow wokey woke. And I kind of mess with them. I think making the Flash black is cool. Could also be interpreted as racist. I don't necessarily think that. And his grandchildren, he has a black grandchild, if I'm not mistaken, in continuity. So I think Barry Allen does. And so he has a black grandchild in the future. Anyway, I think the point is, and I think the bigger point that we need to discuss is black comic book fans exist. We do go out and support these. The entire milestone thing that happened a couple months ago, a lot of black people ran out to the stores and demanded the milestone event, and they bought it. It's not black people that aren't buying the black comic books. Let's get that out there real quick. It's not black people that aren't buying them and not supporting them. A lot of it's the white fan base. They're not supporting these new black books. And the reality is, a lot of times they may not even know they exist because the companies don't pour the resources into promoting them. I'm a marketer by trade. That's what I do during the day. You can't expect people to just know about what you're doing. You got to stand out there and let people know what it is. Bruce Wayne put his time in getting trained by ninjas and brought back that skill set to clean up his neighborhood. There's no reason to hate Batman. He didn't choose to be born in wealth. I don't think he did either. But there's an odious side. Like, if look at it like this. Imagine like in my era, right? Who's the rich person in Omaha? It would have been like Warren Buffett. Imagine Warren Buffett suiting up. I'm like in the 80s, Warren Buffett suiting up and deciding he's going to take the streets back and fight for justice. Because the new Batman that is socially active and stuff, that's in my mind, that's a pretty recent development. Back in the days, Batman was I am vengeance, I am the night. And more times than not, he was just beating your ass and leaving you for the cops. And so there's this era of he is the law kind of thing that is kind of problematic just because he's a rich white guy. I mean, it is what it is. Well, and the new Batman, I mean, Batman is, I think there's a level of social consciousness that's happened with Batman where people became kind of aware of how it came off, where he is more in line with reforming and redeeming people and stuff like that. And they've focused his ire on, taking down corruption in Gotham City and all that other stuff. There are layers to Batman. And I did an entire segment of why Batman sucks. And that was like 10 years ago. So, and I said it as a Batman fan, right? Like I did it kind of as a joke as a Batman fan, where I talked about him having like a nearly 75% fatality rate with his sidekicks, the children that are in his care. Hey, I'm gonna train you. I'll do some backflips for a couple of months, and now I'll put you out here, and you're gonna go heads up with the Joker. Let's go. That philosophy has always been kind of weird to me, but they've really tried to address a lot of the historical criticisms of Batman, where it's like, so why don't you invest that money into fixing Gotham? And he actually has. And the newest Batman book, he actually is really invested in it too, even though he doesn't have his money as much anymore. Sign me as a writer. Yeah. Batman was getting his get back after his parents get shot. But and that's the thing. And so I understand it. But also imagine how Frank Castle would be in a Batman book, and how he would try to take down Frank Castle. And where's the line drawn? Because like I said, Batman won't kill you, but he may make you wish you were dead. I've seen Batman break people's backs. I've seen him do all kinds of stuff that made people's lives substantially materially worse. He just didn't kill him. So, who controls Arkham and has a rivalry with Amanda Waller or something? I hate Amanda Waller, but she's a great villain. That's what a villain's supposed to do. I liked Amanda Waller. Okay, so I remember the Suicide Squad in the 80s, early 90s. And that Suicide Squad was Captain Boomerang. It was amazing. And Amanda Waller was an anti-hero. And I kind of liked her as in that capacity, as opposed to a full-fledged villain. Such a good character. Batman will fuck you up for real. Yeah, Batman don't play games with you. Batman don't play games with you. Like, and I think that's been the dichotomy. That's always been the joke, but it is kind of true when you read some of the older Batman books. Batman was ruthless back in the days, bro. like he's a good guy, a bad guy. And I think they've kind of mellowed him out a little bit. But I'm a hypocrite because I love Moon Knight books too. And Moon Knight doesn't really care if he doesn't come out like, and most times Moon Knight doesn't come out with the intent to kill you, but he doesn't necessarily care if you survive the encounter either. Doesn't. And so I'm a huge mark for Moon Knight. And yeah, Moon Knight moves in that manner too, where he doesn't really care if you survive. Like, it's nice if you're on his bad side. Okay, so you made it. I mean, you're in the wheelchair. You got to steer it by, by twitching your eyelids. That's about it. And Moon Knight's like, all right, well, problem solved. And he moves on to the next thing. So he may not have a no killing rule, but I mean, if it happens, got to break a few eggs. And that's how Moon Knight operates. So I understand it. Batman will make people unable to walk. And see, that's why I mess with, I like Absolute Batman. And that's why I was 100, and I still got to figure out where this boycott is or what the status of it is, because I would still participate in it if it's still on, but that would mean giving up my favorite comic book series in the last 10 years, which is Absolute Batman. I really enjoy Absolute Batman. And I like the concept of turning Batman on his head, where you get to see why he develops his no killing rule, because he killed up a bunch of Nazis. He killed up a bunch of neo-Nazis. And when I say killed up a bunch of neo-Nazis, Batman was elbow deep in killing neo-Nazis. He was going in. It was an annual book. He was setting them on fire. He was running over them. It was a full-blown murder spree that Batman was on in that book. And he had to, when he finally calmed down and saw what he had actually done, and he met a friend of his father, he had a moment of self-reflection, kind of broke down and decided, okay, I can't operate like this. And it was a really interesting way they did it, because in the Absolute Batman universe, Absolute Batman will maim you. Like, he cut off somebody's hand, bro. He cut off somebody's hand, is like, you better get to the hospital. And that's how he took care of it. A guy tried to square off with him, and Batman pulled off his battle axe and cut dude's hand off and said, all right, you better get to the hospital. That looks like it's going to bleed out, man. You better get to the hospital. And that's how he prevented that guy to care. Yeah, he has too many personalities to follow the rules. So they kind of subverted the Batman, and now they're going the darker route, where he actually did, and I was kind of disconnected from it, because he actually did kill. He killed in a degree. He killed Poison Ivy. He killed the last remaining human part of her. And I'm seeing that that's probably a bell that's got to get rung at some point in time. But yeah, I do like. It's hard for me to, as hard as it will be for me to not talk about the Absolute Batman book and stuff. If the boycott is on, I'm not going to until we get the resolve. But if the boycott's off, I don't know. So that's why I had to rewrite this entire segment, because I don't know where we are with the DC blackout. Okay. For anybody that's watching, invariably, when I post these clips on social media, you're going to put it in the comments that Black people don't buy comic books. Black people are buying the comic books. The people that aren't buying Black comic books are white readers. And more times than not, it's because these books are not marketed towards white readers. They don't ever get a chance to see them. Okay. Some people are just assholes and they're not going to read a book with a Black-led character. I get it. But some people, honestly, some white readers honestly don't see these books before they get to, and and companies don't push them. DC's not going to push it. Marvel is doing a little bit better, because the Storm Ongoing is one of their best-selling books. And it's actually a really good book. And so they're not getting the same level of pushback. But Marvel's had its level of problematic shit too when it comes to Black characters. People do like Black heroes. They just don't like woke heroes, whatever that means. And I don't think that means anything. I think, because to me, I think a character that, to me, being heroic is being aligned with social justice to a degree. Not just the criminal justice system, because criminal justice system isn't always just. And so having a character that has a code of ethics that aligns to a specific social justice initiative, to me, that makes more sense. Um, I think what happens is people see. Here's the thing, and I pivot after this. One of the things that, as a Black comic book reader, that you have to do, um, even growing up, and as a Black reader of fiction, um, oftentimes you don't see yourself reflected in the page, so you have to imagine yourself reflected in the page because you're so used to not being represented, that you just get used to it. And for white readers, I don't think that really happens that often. And so it's kind of a jarring experience for them. While Black and brown people, we have to do that all the time. We aren't reflected in a lot of the fiction, specifically as heroic or as main characters in a lot of fiction. And so we have to use our imagination and see that. And since we aren't reflected, we just kind of get used to having to do that all the time, where white readers don't really have to go through that. And so for them, it's kind of a jarring experience where the main POV character of a thing, of a story, is Black or brown. And there's a disconnect there. And it just comes from the fact that they don't really ever have to do that. Yeah, well, it's one of those malleable terms that just means whatever somebody doesn't like. Like if they don't like Black people, if they don't like Black people and they see a movie with Black people, then the movie is woke, right? Um, it's this weird malleable term. Really, it started around the Harlem Renaissance, is where you would hear Black folks talking about woke, and being woke is being awake to the ways of uh, white supremacy and seeing what's happening in the world and not having your eyes closed to it. It's been part of Black parlance for over a century. But some um, you know, some white political guy, some political operative decided that he was going to take that word and market it and put a meaning behind it that wasn't there so that he could turn out voters. The same thing with DEI, if you're being honest. These political operatives get paid to take these words and make them into buzzwords, and they're a rallying point for people who really don't want to think. Oh yeah, I know you know what it means. I'm kind of cluing in the audience a little bit. Yeah, they hate characters aware of social issues, and they hate characters that make them, their escapism. Um, they feel like it diminishes their ability to enjoy their escapism if they actually have to deal with real world stuff in comic books. And for me, to a degree, I understand, but then the other side is, for it to be realistic to me and represent, it's got to speak to something I'm familiar with too. So you're gonna tell me that in Marvel Comics there was never segregation, but there was, but there wasn't, and mutants are a stand-in for Black people, but they're still Black people, and Black people are still discriminated against, and we're never going to address that. Like, you get where I'm going with it, right? Well, and they put a lot of money into. There's a lot of money that went into the entire DEI woke. What was the other one? CRT. Like they made those into political buzzwords that they stripped all the meaning out of what they meant, and they knew that most people are incurious, and they're not going to really find out what these words actually mean, and so they can just make them into buzzwords. And like I said, the entire woke thing was really a kind of a slap in the face because Black people were saying woke for a long time, and then all of a sudden Tucker Carlson pops up and starts talking about it's woke, and with that really, that Tucker Carlson shit that he gets, and it ended up becoming a pejorative. Yeah. It's all based on cultural biases and attitudes, right? And it's also kind of a heuristic because you can make woke into anything that you don't like. So you don't have to clearly define the things that you don't like, and you don't have to risk your social standing saying that you hate things that represent progress or diversity or anything. You can just say you don't like wokeness, and you don't have to look like an asshole. Yep. The 35-year-old who can't handle social issues in the show, but We're GI Joe fan, right? GI Joe, He-Man, the Captain Planet, dude. Captain Planet. I saw a drive-by on Captain Planet. I saw a drive-by, and we were actually dealing with drive-bys in the city. Captain Planet had an entire AIDS episode that ended up becoming a meme, essentially. And so they talked about social issues in these shows all the time. They talked about them all the time. But I do believe that there was a very specific demographic of, and this is the racial divide. I do think there was a very specific demographic of white kids that they just saw it as entertainment. Meanwhile, black people saw it as, wow, that's speaking the things I know about. And so it connected in a way that with the audience. It's just like when I have pejorative. Okay, yeah. It's just when I have oh yeah, Quantum Leap is crazy. And they didn't shy away from anything. But hell, if you go back and watch old episodes of the Twilight Zone, Rod Serling was on some stuff, bro. He's talking about racism, classism, capitalism. Like, he was banging on everything. Rod Serling was banging on everything. And it was one of the most watched shows in television history. And Captain Planet was really Ted Turner's vehicle to get a lot of social issues out there that he cared about too, which was interesting. Yeah, Captain Planet was trying. I wish they would have tried a little bit harder with their animation, though. That was the only thing. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The ultimate white savior show. They don't like it means to be black in reality they constantly live in. So I'll give you a quick story from my case management days. So I had one of my workers had a family, white mom, biracial kid. Biracial kid was in on probation for something really, really minor and stupid. And so I'm supervising my worker in the house and just being there as a backup and support to her. And so this kid, mom, when she got mad at this boy, she would call him the most vile racial slurs that I've ever seen. And I've experienced a lot of racial slurs. I've experienced death threats. This was one of the ugliest, and this kid couldn't have been more than 14 years old. But she would get mad at him and just berate him with all kinds of racist slurs. And his little brother and sister were white. Like, he was the only biracial kid in the family. And she would actively segregate him from stuff. And I talked about this. She'd actively segregate him from activities, and he couldn't be with it. But then, in contrast to all that, she would still dote over him like a mom. She'd get fuss over him about his coat and hat, making sure that he ate and do all the things that a mom is supposed to do. She still had some of the parenting capacities. And so when we did part of the assessment, she had the protective capacities there, but her behaviors were out of control. And I'm saying all that to say this: racism is not rational. There are diehard racists that marry black and brown people all the time. Sexual attraction, in some cases, it's a fetishization, and other times it's a real disconnect. It's real cognitive dissonance. It just is. And so that's why I don't argue. I try to avoid arguing a racist, because it's not coming from any kind of logical place, no matter how articulate they try to be. I don't, because it's never coming from a place of rationality. We just don't want to see black people on the screen. That's true. And I think this country would be better if we actually acknowledge the fact that some people just don't want to see black people do anything ever. And they're going to complain no matter what, and stop giving them airtime. It was like the third to last episode of him, not kidding. He leapt into the great grandfather Martin Luther King, saved the family and set them up on the way it becomes. Oh my God. I might have to watch that just to write something about it, because I'm trying to get back into my writing bag. I may have to watch that just to write something about it. That's so compelling that um the whiplash, the whiplash is amazing. It's like the old it's like watching the old shows where they had the all black cast and the white writers writing them, you know. If you've ever seen uh Bamboozled, that kind of vibe. I gotta go now. I'm gonna go watch it. I'm going to go watch it just so that just so I can see it. So basically, they did an Avatar, right? Like a James Cameron Avatar, where the white guy has to go in and save the natives who have been living their entire lives as natives, and he goes in and becomes one of them, but he's better than them at everything. He's better at them than being them. Oh wow, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. I got to go see that. And I mess with Scott Bakula too. Used to like Quantum Leap. I mean, I think it might be a product of the 90s though, because we used to get a lot of ham-fisted kind of stuff like that in the 90s, bro. You know. Oh wow. Wow. I got to go see that. You're not going to defend your own well-being. Oh wow. I'm fascinated by that. I'm fascinated by weird television shows and weird movies that try to tackle social issues clumsily. I'm fascinated by that kind of stuff. Some women in my family purposely say horrible stuff that you should never say, like they say nothing. I wonder how many people in their family have felt like this. Yeah, like I said, racism it tickles a place that is not a rational place in people's brains. And so, like I said, that's why I don't argue with racists. I just mock them and criticize them, and make fun of them for my own enjoyment, and I move on. I think people let down their guard to a degree when they are around people that they consider family, even if it's mixed company. And I think that's kind of a natural byproduct. And when you have families that are racially mixed, you're going to run into that a lot. So anyway, I'm going to go find out more about the DC blackout before I do any more on it, because I need to make sure that I'm going with the right information, because I wanted to do it and kind of hype it up. But if it's not running, it's not running. Now, there are black characters that can be featured in books. Jon Stewart is a stalwart. Like I had the Jon Stewart Mosaic book, back in the days. I think Jon Stewart, a lot of people associate Jon Stewart as Green Lantern, especially if you grew up on Justice League and the Justice League animated series. Jon Stewart was Green Lantern. Like that was it. So when they said Green Lantern, they thought Jon Stewart. And so he's always a good contender to carry a book by himself. Just because he's an interesting character, he's an interesting spin on the Green Lantern mythos, where it's supposed to be fueled by imagination and everything, and he's an architect. So a lot of the constructs he makes are practical, and he's also this super disciplined military guy. He's not fast and loose like Hal. Of course, Static. We're always going to have Static as an option. After having an affair with them while married to a wife who ended up having like 6 daughters, and the mother would not let biracial guys. Now that's racism. Racism's not rational. And mom was carrying out. Mom was still because mom didn't understand this. The daughters do live in 2 worlds, and mom could not conceptualize that. That's just my take on it. I don't know, but I think that's kind of what it was. Mom couldn't conceptualize daughters being in 2 worlds. As far as she is concerned, they were just dark white people, and didn't want to acknowledge that. And she wanted the daughters to carry around the same biases and prejudices that she had, and which is a real mind job for people. And I don't think a lot of times some parents of biracial kids, especially if they're not in tune with raising their kids to be functional, and they're not in tune with what's in the best interest of the kid, that's what you're going to run into. And Green Lantern is black. Yeah. Well, there's Nubia, and Nubia's been around forever, and Nubia is Wonder Woman's sister. You can write a whole book, and Nubia's had a short limited miniseries and stuff. You can build an entire build an entire thing around Nubia. One of the things is that you got to understand is, specifically when it comes to DC and their absence of black characters in important positions in mainline continuity, the unfortunate side is when we do introduce these black characters, oftentimes they don't have a lot of history and story, even though they've been around for 30, 40, 50 years. There's not a ton of history and story behind them because they were never featured. And so writers never got a chance to create the narrative for them. And so new writers are basically creating new adventures for these black characters that have been in existence forever, because they just got forgotten about. They got treated like side characters. What? They're like Olive. Yeah, and the complexity of who's white and who ain't white in this country has always been kind of a point of fascination for me. But you got Static, you got all the stuff from Milestone that you can draw from. Cyborg, who was that? The last the Cyborg series was pretty dope. Was it Frank? I'm trying to remember who wrote that book. Of course, there's Nubia. Black Lightning has been around since the 70s. He came from suicide slums. He's out the slums. He's trying to stay out the ghetto. We can get rid of all that. We can get rid of all that shit. Mr. Terrific was a huge people were going nuts over Mr. Terrific after that Superman movie. And he has a lot of stories, a lot of history to draw from. You could feature him in a book. And of course, Duke Thomas Signal, who is fascinating. He is another one of Batman's wards, partners, and he has a good power set. He got a mini series, but he never got an ongoing. I think that they could actually do something with them. There's lots of characters that can be used. I think it's disingenuous when people say there aren't any good black characters. There aren't. It's the writers whose job it is to make a character interesting. If you could do it with, God, what's that guy's name? I can see it. Dr. Nemesis. X-Men, for a while, Dr. Nemesis was the most interesting character in X-Men books. Bar none. He was the most interesting character in it. And he's this 40s era character that was a reformed Nazi and all kinds of other stuff. They made him incredible. He stole the show every time he was on the panel, and he was barely in a lot of books. Dr. Nemesis was amazing. Static, Steel. We could do something with Steel. Let's see. Backstory with the actor was great too. Yeah, I think Milestone could be the blueprint. There's a lot of stuff to draw from Milestone that they actually use it. But DC is a corporation above all else, and so their interests are going to be driven by whatever corporate interests sit on top of the company. I think DC is DC. I'm trying to remember who their ownership is. The problem is that people like the wine. Yeah, I agree. I think, like I said, if they can invest time in making a Z-list character like Dr. Nemesis the most interesting member of the X-Men for a number of years, where he created a flying shark, a genetically modified flying shark that he flew into battle. I love Dr. Nemesis. And they could make him interesting after just him existing for almost 80 years and them not really doing anything with him. There's no excuse why they can't pick up some of these black characters that they've discarded and make them interesting and give them something that the crowd can invest in. Warner Brothers. That's Zasloff. I think that's Zasloff. Overall characters is playing. Well, and there's a wealth of characters that they can be using. So Warner Brothers Discovery is Zasloff, if I'm not mistaken. And he is. It may not be still him, but he was a piece of work. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. They'd be like, man, this breaks continuity. When's the last time you cared about Phantom Lady? I think she's been dead since Final Crisis. Was it Final Crisis? I think it might have been where Deathstroke killed her, but they'd be mad. They'd be ready to take the streets. And they introduce characters like in the Superman books, they introduce Marilyn Moon Knight, who is an intriguing design and character. We just don't know anything about her. Like, we got a little bit of a backstory where she's like this spirit of vengeance from Metropolis, but that's about it. You don't know what her power set is or anything, but she's an interesting design and character and a compelling backstory. But like I said, they're not really spending time with it. They had some super cool native characters in the past, and they. Can you hear me now? Give me mic check, mic check. Can you guys hear me? Let me know if you can hear me in the chat because I accidentally turned off my mic. All right, cool. They need to they really do need to, bring, like, there's nothing wrong. I think there is nothing wrong with saying, hey, we have some indigenous characters that are kind of sitting by the wayside. We can activate that audience of comic book readers a little bit and give them something to invest in the mainline stories. Let's hire some indigenous writers to write for them. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think there's this big pushback against that idea. But if it's capitalism, everybody's buying. If the goal is to sell comic books, why do you only want to sell to one audience or try to sell to one audience? Why not try to activate and get all these different audiences excited about these characters that they see in these books that can represent them? That meant a lot. Like, I tell people a lot of times when I was growing up, my mom, I learned how to read at an early age. I was a late talker, but when I started talking, I was fully, I was talking in complete sentences. But my mom taught me how to read through a mix of reading to me and then giving me comic books to look at. And she would go out and find comic books with Black characters, and that's how I learned how to read independently. There's nothing wrong with it being intentional about making sure that your creative team reflects your audience to a degree, and you can activate segments of your audience and build fan bases you didn't even know existed. I don't understand why there's a big pushback against that, especially with these billion-dollar companies. They're trying to reach as many people as possible. People complain about Marvel getting woke and all this other stuff and all these diverse characters and they're pandering and whatnot. They like money. Disney likes their money. And the more people, more of their audience they can activate and get them excited about the characters because they see themselves in the characters on screen, the more people are going to buy tickets to see these movies. So I don't think that I don't think it's necessarily anti-competitive or anti-cap, anti-money making or anti-business to be intentional about having a diverse group of people. It's just who's being threatened by that. Because again, the oldest thing in this country is fear of real competition. If some white writers start feeling like this Black or brown or whoever writer is competing with them, they might start looking over their shoulder. And then that's where it gets weird. You know, they didn't burn down Black townships just for shits and giggles, bro. There was a legitimate fear of competition. Like money is still money, right? Segregate the company that wanted to segregate segregation that they found out how far it got them. Well, they always wanted to sell. Like the money never had a color. So they would go along with segregation just because it kept them popular in the eyes of whoever, but they would still try to get the money from both sides of it. Like when banking was really segregated, one of the negative things that happened, I mean, it wasn't negative for everybody, but when Black people weren't allowed to use banks. Oh yeah, that was one of my favorite shows, is Boardwalk Empire. When black people were not allowed to use banks and the Great Depression rolled around, guess who was flush with cash? And then banks said, wait a minute. Hold on a second. Hold on a second now. But yeah, that's where a lot of black people, since we are unbanked, we had to create our informal lending systems and everything and work independently of banks. And they work like hell to rope us in and integrate us in this exploitative banking system that we have. Nucky would have those speeches where you say the most racist stuff to the white people. Right. He was a politician. Nucky was an interesting character study in that progressive speeches. Yeah, and he used Chalky. Chalky was kind of his arm. Like he knew how valuable the black community was. But he also was the ultimate politician. And that's what made the character compelling. Yeah. Chalky White was amazing. He was an amazing character. And it's really too bad we lost that actor, that kind of bums me out. Hope I'm not saying super uncomfortable stuff. Sometimes I say something because of my ADHD. Don't worry about it. I will let you know. Like if you're on my stream, you say something crazy, I will let you know. And as long as you're able to say, "Oh, okay, well, my bad," or whatever, that's cool. It's not like that dude who showed up trying to force me into debate and wanted me to call him and put him on voice chat and stuff so he could argue. So he could, that was crazy. So it's not that bad. I'd watch the show about that character. I think there's opportunity to show Chalky White. Like they could have made him a POV character and established an entire show around him by himself. I think that they could have done that really easily because the entire black community in Boardwalk Empire was its own entity in and of itself. And there's plenty of stories to be told about that. So, like I said, I'll come back to you guys and kind of let you know the status of the DC blackout, if it's still going on or whatnot. And we can talk about it at another time. If it's still going on, I can run down the details and how we if you want to participate, that's cool. I'm going to make fun of the people that get mad about the fact that black people were talking about boycotting DC, because people really did get upset about it over something that didn't really even affect them directly. Like they didn't have to participate in the boycott at all. And the creators of the boycott weren't really demanding anything of anybody. They're asking that people participate, but they weren't passing judgments on people if they were or weren't, but people were getting in their feelings about it. A spinoff show with Chalky White and his family would have been amazing. And I almost feel like that could have been a standalone show, entire standalone show by itself. Look what they did with Spot and the Spider-Verse. Yeah. Spot was an interesting character and they fleshed him out, but Spot's always been kind of an interesting character in the comic books to a degree, but they gave him a really good personality and voice. So, a number of black comic book creators they organized a boycott of DC because it's been 1,200 days since DC has had a black led comic book and mainline continuity, and every time they run out a black book, the excuse has always been, well, they don't get support, but more times than not, it's a lack of marketing that goes to it. They don't put the resources behind it. They let Scott Snyder's Green Arrow go for almost a year, and it was not selling. Scott Snyder will tell you it wasn't selling anything before they decided to cancel that book. And black books get treated with really short shrift. And so they were asking for a mainline continuity, black centered book using one of the big black character, one of the popular black characters in the DC framework, and actually giving them the same opportunity, same runway, same marketing that you find with some of the other books. And until that was fulfilled, they're saying that basically a moratorium on for people that wanted to participate in the boycott buying DC books and creators talking about DC books. And so I had an entire segment tonight talking about the boycott, but then right before I came to air, they were saying that the boycott might have been called off, and so I didn't want to speak about it until I learned a little bit more about it. Yeah, it's something that just it was smaller scale, but it's something that's I wanted to give a platform to, so more people knew about it. Yeah, Spot was a nothing character. He's kind of a comedy character in comic book in Spider-Man books. He's kind of played for jokes. A lot of Spider-Man's B and C and D tier villains were kind of played as joke villains. And to make him in the Spider-Verse, to make him more interesting was kind of a dope thing. Yeah, they gave him a voice. I have not watched Spider Noir yet. I want to watch it. I know the comic book was super dark, bro. Like the Spider Noir comic book was dark. It was grim. It talked about Nazism and racism and all kinds of other stuff. And I want to see if they can capture some of the vibe of that, because they kind of put the character on the wayside and forgot about him for a little bit and then made him really cartoony. So I want to see what they do with him. But yeah, Spider Noir, if you get a chance to actually read the book, oh, it's amazing. It is amazing. The original book, it was amazing. It's just dark. It's grim. It's noir. It's a noir story. He's a jobber for the longest time. I like watching jobbers. I like when they see, I like when they see, I like when I see characters that have been kind of punching bags get their own personality. I liked when Catman, what Gail Simone did with Catman, when she was doing the Secret Six books, I believe. Catman was a super interesting character, and he was never presented as a serious character until that book. But she also gave depth to Bane and gave layers to him, where he almost had this really protective capacity for Scandal Savage. Like he almost viewed her as a surrogate daughter. And some of the stuff he did, because he had a sense of honor. Because Bane, even though he's a villain, he always had this weird sense of honor and code of justice. And Gail Simone really brought that out. I gotta watch Spider Noir, and so maybe I could do that. And yep, um, it's the best outfits. All right, I'm checking it out. Um, like I said, I think the premise in the comic books, the way they set it up is Spider-Man in this darker kind of grim, more hopeless universe. But I want to see what happens with it. All right, let me jump to um ADHD stuff real quick. This is the Ask a Dad. And I want to talk about that negative inner voice. I've talked about it lots of times on air, but um right now I'm kind of giving you a glimpse behind the curtain. I have a business move that I'm planning out. And right now I'm hyper focused on building the thing, but I keep getting stuck at the part where I have to ask for money. And I've, from a standpoint of what I've accomplished in the business world, I know it's a pretty decent, reasonably impressive resume. One of the things I do, my negative inner voice, I undervalue what I know and undersell it all the time. And so it's not random noise, it has a history. That negative inner voice has a history. And so the undercharging piece comes from that negative inner voice screaming at me that my knowledge and time is not worth what I need to make on it. Let me see if I can Boston Globe. Shoot. I gotta see if I can copy that. Maddie, what I'll do is I'll go in on Twitch and copy the link, because I can't, like right here, I can't really do anything with it. Well, maybe I can copy the text. StreamYard is a weird platform. Yeah, StreamYard is a weird platform when it comes to links that are in comments. The only wall Spider can climb. No, don't worry about it. I'll go back and pull it up and take a look at the outfit and see what I can do on that. But yeah, so right now I'm making this business move, and my negative inner voice is telling me that I should not charge what I need to charge. I don't want to be arrogant. I don't want to, and there's always a fear, even as a business owner who's done this a long time, there's always this fear that once you take money from somebody, it's becoming a real thing. And the service is valuable. People I've worked with said it's a valuable thing and it's helped them out. But there's this weird thing like I don't deserve it. Okay. And I know that there was a learning curve as a Black entrepreneur who's never really learned how to value my time and money. You know, I always feel like somebody was doing me a favor by giving me business for a long time, as opposed to looking at it like I'm solving a problem for them. And so, um, the ADHD layer specifically is I'm hyper focused on building out everything, and making sure everything is perfect. Um, but I can't. It's hard for me to push the button when it's time to say, okay, this is how much the thing costs. I want to iterate until it's perfect. By the time it's completely done iterating, it looks completely different than when I started. And then I'm like, oh, this is not what my intention was. Yeah, it like I said, it's one of those things where I know it's bullshit. And Maddie, I know it's like a negative bullshit thing I'm playing in my brain, but it just comes up whenever it's time to do the negotiation piece. That's the free market. I've walked in and pitched and it may not see, for some people this is big money, for other people it's like small potatoes. I've walked in and pitched a $42,000 project and got it without any questions asked. Um that doubt has never left me though. you know. Yeah. Well, and I can the problem is always the race to the bottom kind of thing, because price is positioning. The way that you price your services, the way that the market sees you oftentimes. And so I've experienced it where I've reduced my prices and it absolutely killed the killed the flow of clients because it was too cheap. It was too cheap to be effective in the client's mind. Yeah, but if you charge people less, you get more customers. From the business standpoint, what happens is when you charge people less and get more customers, your time ends up becoming cheaper. And so you end up working a lot harder and getting less in return. And oftentimes, when you then this is the part I know. So this is why it's a mind job. So that's why I need y'all to understand this. Um, when you discount your services, people come to you with discount expectations. And oftentimes you end up getting price sensitive people, and they view you as a discount service, and oftentimes they're primed to not be satisfied with your services. They feel like they got it for too cheap. Yeah, and that's the big challenge. It's just a cycle that I get in as a business owner when it is time to actually say this is how much this service costs, because I know that that's going to be something that's never going to get easier for me. I just got to get used to being uncomfortable. That's the ADHD thing, right? Like you never get fully comfortable with the thing. You just learn how to be uncomfortable with the thing. Yep. I've charged premium services and gotten premium payments and never had a complaint. Never had to listen to it. And then I charge bargain basement prices for a thing and experience like some of the worst customers I've ever had, because they had bargain basement expectations. And so no matter what I did, they weren't going to be happy with the service. Yeah. And that's what it is. So um it's just, guys, what I'm saying is the point I'm making is I have this awareness of a lot of this stuff. It's a constant battle that I fight internally. When you have an inner voice that catalogs all the failures and none of the successes, whenever I get into an uncomfortable situation like this where I have to stand on my square and say this is how much this thing costs without flinching, it's a challenge. It just is. And so it's something I overcome every single day. And so I'm giving you guys a little bit of a glimpse behind the curtain of it. And for anybody out there that's a business owner with ADHD, it's a real thing. You may not know how much you're worth. You may not know how much your services are actually worth to somebody, but I promise you, if you undercharge for them consistently, you are never going to please anybody, because people are never happy with discounts more times than not. Oh yeah, it's the negotiation piece, and that's cool. I'm not scared of the no as much as I used to be. It's just a mind game whenever I have to say, okay, here's the thing, this is how much it costs. It's just a mind game, guys. Because I have a voice screaming at me saying, you're not worth anything. Even though people have stepped to me and said, hey, how much is this? I'll pay for it. You have a voice in your brain that's been with you since 7 that constantly tells me that I'm not worth anything. It's a battle. Like I said, it keeps a highlight reel of all the things that didn't go right. And so that's the mind, that's the mind thing, where you are fully cognizant of what reality is, but then you have your subjective experience internally. And that's kind of where I'm at. Oh yeah. Man, I never do. Like I said, I've pitched $1,000 job for multi-thousands of dollars. It's not that, it's not like I can't do it. It's just super, super uncomfortable. Like there's a level of anxiety that happens every single time. Because they sound, yeah, that's the thing. I didn't try, and that is the secret of pricing, y'all. And that's the challenge, because I know that. I've talked to clients through that. I've coached people through that. But sometimes you just need to remind yourself. And that's the ADHD thing. It's being fully aware of what the reality is and still having to navigate what your brain is saying, to the signals your brain is sending to you. And that's the game. That's the challenge of it. And so for anybody out there, that's kind of the ADHD layer. I'm fully aware of a lot of the stuff, and I'm fully aware that a lot of the pricing stuff in my head, and the negative stuff that my brain tells me about myself is complete and utter bullshit. I know that it's not true because I have 10 years of experience showing me as working proof of what my value is. But it's something that I just have to lean into not being comfortable with, and getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Um, and yeah, like I said, it's not the difference of not knowing my value. It's just sometimes you just, every once in a while, I succumb to it too. So again, and I guess it's the general question. The story that I kind of tell myself, that what my brain is telling me, like it's almost two parts of my brain that are kind of at war with one another. Negative inner voice that's constantly screaming that I don't deserve anything good. There's a negative inner voice that says you don't deserve anything good. And here's this thing that went wrong when you were in 10th grade. This is how you screwed up in October of your 10th grade year. This is why you suck and you should never ask for anything. And so to have that, like cataloging and blasting that in your brain constantly, it's a struggle. And so I'm just giving voice to it. For me, I need more customers early on to give me a good rating. Then I can raise my prices gradually, but I'm not a business person. Okay, so this is what I'll tell you. Experienced business owner. And I'm saying this fully aware of how hard this is. Your price probably needs to be um, high enough where you feel uncomfortable quoting it, because it's a race to the bottom at some point. Like it's a law of diminishing returns. You end up in this race to the bottom. And so you don't start out low and negotiate down. You start high and negotiate to what you want, to what you need. But understand, especially as a business owner, you have to pay for your insurance. You have to pay for the equipment that you're using. You have to pay for the price of the equipment that you're using and the replacement costs, electricity, car, all that other stuff gets factored in. When you have a job, a lot of that stuff is already taken care of, and you get your check and that's it. When you're the business owner, you incur all of those costs, so it needs to be built into your price. Artists are the worst. Creatives are the worst when it comes to pricing themselves. I'm just be honest with you. And it's because from a creative standpoint, we are the harshest critics of our own work. And we're also driven to seek novelty. And those two things don't make a great methodology for pricing yourself and pricing your services out. So artists need to ask for more every time. You need to ask for an uncomfortable amount to get compensated for to get compensated an amount that's comfortable for you to live on. Like I said, I know this stuff, but even I struggle with the inner part of my brain working against me. And so I'm just telling you, kind of giving you a glimpse behind the curtain of what's happening in my brain. Um, but yeah, if you're a business owner and if you're new, you need to be asking for more all the time because and this is the piece that is hard because you're constantly like I constantly have to fight with the imposter syndrome. The people that never deal with imposter syndrome are con artists, rip off artists, scam artists, bullshit artists. They never worry about imposter syndrome because they're never accountable to the outcomes. They never feel any accountability to the outcomes. So they'll just take your money and be fine with it. If you feel like, oh man, should I charge this much for that? That means that you're accountable for your outcomes, and sometimes you could that dial can get overtuned a little bit. Thank you, thank you. Like I said, it's one of those things where I've reached that kind of part with my ADHD where I know where it's leading me down the wrong path, and I can still give voice to it, but also still feel the entire battle of my brain and fighting internally with it. Like it's a real thing. So, but yeah, I would be ask for an uncomfortable amount of money and know that you deserve it because that's what I have to do to power through this. Every time that conversation comes up, how much does this cost? Oh boy. Oh boy. Um, because there's a level of rejection sensitivity that still exists, and that's just a byproduct of the neurodivergence up here, where a rejection can feel like you got stabbed in the heart. Even if you're getting rejected by an utter stranger who never had any intention of doing business with you. They were just testing the waters. That rejection could feel like an absolute shank. It like somebody shivved you in the heart. It's crazy work. Real quick pivot and then give you guys a quick status update because I said I was kind of going to share with you my journey through rereading The Dark Tower, and right now I am in book 4 and I am dreading every aspect of reading this book because this is the big sad book and I remember living through this the first time. It's The Wizard in the Glass. And yeah, I realize that as I progress through reading the Dark Tower books, I'm actually slowing down because I'm getting to the part where it's the big sad that happens, and I'm trying to avoid it. I may end up like it's so bad, I may end up skipping this book because the stuff that happens in this book is so bleak and so depressing and so hopeless. And plus, there's a weird ick. Like Stephen King has this weird ick factor, especially when it comes to kids. There's ick in here. There's a lot of ick, and there's a lot of problematic ick in it. And it was and for those that have read Stephen King's It, for those that have read Stephen, wow, that's a really weird thing to say. For those that have read Stephen King's It, when I say the ick, it's the ick from It. If you've read Stephen King's It, it's the same kind of ick. And those that know what I'm talking about know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I think this one needs to go. I'm not even gonna put it on my screen. Um, that's crazy. But anyway, um, yeah, and so that's kind of why let me see if I can get this. That's kind of why I'm speaking my mind. Okay. Um, that's kind of why I'm like, I don't know if I want to continue on with this. I love the Dark Tower, but The Wizard in the Glass was the book I struggled the most to get through the first time. And I'm encountering the same. There's a ick. There's that ick that is similar to it. I don't want to like completely spoil it, but um it's I don't know what he was going through or what drugs he was on at the time when he wrote the stuff in the Losers Club and what they had to do, the trial of Chud or whatever. I don't know what he was on when he was writing that, but he could have kept that shit. And we're seeing it in the Dark Tower, the Wizard in the Glass book. I don't want to even talk about it on air. But it's ick. I say that as a Stephen King fan. And so, and plus it's sad. It's ick and it's sad. So I may just skip the Wizard in the Glass. I may just skip the Wizard. I may just skip the Wizard in the Glass. I don't know. I'm trying to get through all the Dark Tower books because it's still my favorite fantasy series. But again, there are parts of it that are weird and problematic and kind of gross. And I'm at the intersection of weird, problematic, and gross, plus sad. And I've dealt with enough death and stuff like that. And so yeah, I think we gonna how the hell do I give me a second. How do I fix this? How do I fix this one? Yeah, here's the thing though. And I'm telling you from a lot of people were in the Epstein files. It depends on what their level of involvement is, because if you got called into the hotline, specifically FBI hotline, you're going to get mentioned in the Epstein files. It's just a weird thing. And so I need to go back and kind of see where he actually was, because I started digging through it and it just, yeah, a lot of people were just mentioned, and it didn't necessarily mean causation. Like there are elements where you actually have to follow some of the threads of what was in there to find out. And you could literally, somebody could have called you into the FBI hotline because they had a grudge and you would have appeared in the files, just because that's how they dump those documents on the public. And yeah, but that doesn't change the fact that Stephen King was involved in ick in some of his books. And so that's what I'm struggling with the Wizard in the Glass. I may skip to the Wolves of the Kala. I think that's the book after that, or it might be the Wind Through the Keyhole, because that's the one that came out after all the mainline books were written, and it was like it happened between Wizard in the Glass and Wolves of the Kala. So I may go back and read that. I may just skip the rest of the Wizard in the Glass. I don't know. It's too grim and too dark and too kind of grody for me to want to continue on with it. And so yeah, like I said, ick. It was actual ick. But we'll see. Yep, a lot of people were uninvolved and just mentioned, right? And that's just how it goes. And I think that's also why they dumped the files on the public the way they did, because it's hard to parse who is who and who is what, because it makes everybody look guilty by implication and also makes everybody look innocent by implication. Tis what it is. Yep. Stephen Bannon style flooding the zone. And that was the entire intention of it. The way they dropped the files on people. But guys, I think that might be all I got. We're about almost 2 hours in. So if you're interested, if you want to get into and understand Stephen King's universe, you can start with The Dark Tower. Understand that it's a book that is a product of its time. It's also a product of Stephen King's drug use at some points in time, at various points in time, his substance use. And so There's some weird shit that is in the books, but there's always weird shit, and there's really always weird, uncomfortable shit in Stephen King's books. That's just kind of what it is. And so I would, if you're interested to learn the backstory, like it's really the Dark Tower is really the spine of Stephen King's entire universe. And so if you're interested, go ahead and pick it up because it'll tell you how a lot of these stories relate to one another and stuff. So anyway, and Maddie, I will do. I'll probably we could do. What was it? A raid. I'm still learning how to do Twitch, and so I'll probably do a raid next week. Figure out whose stream we can jump on as I close it out and pitch it to. If that's what that means, I thought that's what it means. I'm an old man. I'm still figuring out the Twitch thing. So, but yeah, I will do that next week. I got to get up. I got a couple of things I need to take care of before we shut the house down. So, I do appreciate you guys tuning in. Let me know, if there's any topics you want to talk about. Yeah. So, is always a solid raid streamer. So I will do that. Let's see. I just got to figure out how. The problem is, since I'm using a third-party interface, I got to figure out how to actually do that. Since I'm not streaming directly into Twitch, I got to figure out how to do that from StreamYard. And so let me look it up and figure out actually how to do a raid, and then we can do that. Cool. And then once I figure that out, then we can always pitch it and throw it to we can go raid as I leave the show. So once I figure out how to do it, I will let you know. And then I'll try to figure out by next week. So anyway, do appreciate y'all. Thanks for tuning in. This has been Brian with Blerding While Dad. I will talk to y'all later. Peace.